Today we're going to be looking at RL.8.3. Now, what RL.8.3 asks us to do is analyze how particular lines of dialogue or incidents in a literary text propel the action, reveal aspects of a character, or provoke a decision. We're really focusing on dialogue, which is the conversation between the characters in the story. You have dialogue every day with your friends when you talk to them. So we're looking at how does the dialogue really give us clues about the main character in this particular story. This is From the Time Machine by H.G. Wells. In this scene, From the Time Machine, a group of men meet a scientist who claims to have traveled through time. The men feed the time traveler dinner in exchange for the story of his his adventures. Okay, so someone's been in a time machine and these other men are interested. So it's going to be a story about that. Pay attention to the dialogue when they talk to each other. The time traveler came to the place reserved for him without a word. He smiled quietly in his old way. "Where's my mutant?" he said. "What a treat it is to stick a fork into meat again." "Story," cried the editor. "Forget the story," said the time traveler. "I want something to eat." "One word," said I. "Have you been time traveling?" "Yes," said the time traveler, with his mouth full, nodding his head. "I'd give a shilling a line for a verbatim note," said the editor. The time traveler devoted his attention to his dinner and displayed the appetite of a tramp. "I suppose I must apologize," he said. "I was simply starving. I've had the most amazing time." "I will," he went on, "tell you the story of what has happened to me if you like. I was in my laboratory at 4 o'clock, and since then I've lived 8 days, such days as no human being ever lived before. I'm nearly worn out, but I shan't sleep till I've told you this thing over to you. Then I should go to bed, but no interruptions. Is it agreed?" "Agreed," said the editor, and the rest of us echoed, "Agreed." And with that, the time traveler began his story as I had set it forth. He sat back in his chair at first and spoke like a weary man. So we can see dialogue all throughout this particular story. And the dialogue tells us how the time traveler felt about this story. And it also, about his time traveling, and it also tells us how he feels. Right here, what a treat it is to stick a fork into meat again. That tells us that he was hungry. He was hungry from his journey. But it also, he says, "I've had the most amazing time." This shows us that the time traveler really enjoyed his traveling, that he was just really, it was a unique experience that he really wanted to tell them. Also, right here, "I've lived 8 days, such as no human being ever lived before." That tells us that he enjoyed his story. But we also see that he's sleepy. It says, "I'm nearly worn out." But, that word is important. What does he say? He says, "I shall not sleep till I've told this thing over to you. Even though I'm weary, even though I'm worn out, I've had such an amazing time that I am not going to sleep until I tell you this story." And now let's look at how the other people in the story feel about the time traveler. They are very eager to hear his story. And how do we know this? Let's see if I can change colors. The editor says, "I'd give a shilling a line for a verbatim note." Let's discuss real quick. What is verbatim? That means word for word. He would actually pay the time traveler a shilling. That's money. He would pay the time traveler to hear exactly what he had been doing. So all of this dialogue through this story really reveals how everybody in the story feels. Let's look at the question. it says, which line of dialogue best shows how the time traveler feels about what has happened to him? So let's look at our choices. And right here, I want you to pay attention in the question. Best shows. So we're looking for the line of dialogue that best shows how the time traveler feels about what's happened to him. A says, what a treat it is to stick a fork into meat again. So that shows that he was hungry, but I'm not sure that's best. He was hungry. I've lived such days as no human has ever lived before. This is a pretty good choice. This shows that he really enjoyed his trip. But let's go on and see about the other ones. C, forget the story. I want something to eat. This goes back to just showing that he's hungry. And D says, I'm nearly worn out, but I shan't sleep until I've told you this thing over. This one, it does show us that he was excited and wants to share his story, but B is your best choice here because it's much more dramatic. I've lived such days as no human has ever lived before. So this piece of dialogue really shows the reader how excited and how enthusiastic he is about his trip.